Welcome back, everybody. In this video, we're going to go ahead and cover a very simple and essential basic ceramic technique, which is called wedging. And in this particular one, we're going to cover the ram's head wedging or ram's head kneading. So let's go ahead and get started. So why do you need to wedge or knead your clay? There are two main reasons you want to do it. Number one is to make sure that your clay is a nice even consistency from center to outside. Oftentimes when you get your clay brand new from the factory, it's in a bag and the exterior of your clay is usually stiffer than the interior. And so what the wedging or kneading does, it mixes the clay by pushing it into a circular manner, and it transfers the unevenness to the outside and the outside to the inside to make it nice and even and a consistent feel. The second reason is to make sure that your clay has no air bubbles in it. And so the ram's head kneading in particular pushes the clay in that spiral, and it pushes the clay from the inside and it pushes it out in this area closest to your body to then make sure that your clay has no air pockets, which will make your throwing much easier, make your hand building much easier, and large air pockets or air bubbles can result in your clay exploding in the kiln. Okay, so those are the two main reasons. Now, in order to get your clay ready to start kneading it or wedging it, oftentimes when you cut it off of the block that you receive, you should cut it into cubes because it's easier to transform this into a wedged clay and then back into a ball versus flat slabs. Number two is it's easier for beginners to learn from this and then adapt it to whatever you're useful later. So I recommend getting it into a cube, and in our classroom we have our clays prepped into cubes. And you want to transform the cube into a brick shape before we start actually doing the wedging process. So we want the middle faces to be rectangular and the side faces to be either rectangular or square. So the easiest way to do that from a cube, you just take your clay, you pick it up, drop it on the table, and then you rotate it one face over and repeat. And you keep doing this until your clay becomes more of that brick shape. It's okay if the side faces stay at a square, and I actually recommend that rather than a rectangle. And you want it wide enough where if you put your two hands on it, you then wrap your thumbs inwards. You should have about 1 inch to 1.5 inches of spacing between your thumbs and the fleshy part of your thumbs. Once you have your clay set up in this brick shape, let's talk about proper body placement and stance. Having your feet staggered in a line makes doing this process a lot more fatiguing for your arms or your upper body. So I recommend staggering your feet, whether you have your right foot forward, left foot back, or left foot forward, right foot back, whichever you're more comfortable with, because that will allow you to put your body weight into the clay by leaning back and pushing forward rather than staying flat-footed and then using only arms. The second thing I recommend is you have a good enough space from the edge of the table to your piece. So about 6 to 8 inches is good, and your body should not be touching the table. You should have a small gap anywhere from 3 to 6 inches. So the space from your body to the clay should be about 1 foot to 1.5 feet. Okay. After you get that, we want to make sure we hold the clay correctly. So the easiest way I can use this as an analogy for those who play video games, it's kind of like holding a video game controller. But instead of having your fingers at the top triggers, they're connected. And then if you were to connect your fingers together, you end up creating that kind of heart that you often see people do. But you just keep a slight space between it for the clay to fit. And your thumb should more or less be facing up like that. Okay, so that's how you want to hold it. Your palms should always be facing each other from start to finish. So you push, pull back, push forward, pull back, push forward. Pull back, push forward. Your hands should not change. The only difference is the clay moves in it. Oftentimes I see students pull back, and when they push forward, they twist their wrists. Pull back, pull forward. And what happens, that motion will transform the clay from a brick into this croissant. And I'll show you what that looks like in a little bit. So to get this started, so you can see it on this camera, you take your clay, I like putting my pointer fingers on the corner that is away from me, and I rock it towards me so that it is standing on the opposite corner, so that it's more or less a diamond shape from the side view. When you hold the clay, 2 fingers should be on the top face, 2 fingers should be on the bottom face, and then repeat that same hand shape and you mirror both hands. The space between your thumb should be about 1 inch, and your pinky should be about 1 inch to 1.5 inches off the table. So if it's not, rock that clay back a little more. Okay? And the first motion, the first push, all you're doing is pushing the clay diagonally forward into the table, and you stop when your pinkies touch the table. You don't want to drag your pinkies across the table because that will flatten the clay too much, and you will end up burning your pinkies as you drag it across the canvas. So look, your first push will look something like this. Now it's not much, but you can kind of see this weird duck head forming where you have the sides of the bill. If you add 2 eyes, you have the eye, and this is the front of the mouth. Now if you're pushing with uneven pressure, like I did, you can see one side is elongated, the other side is shorter. So especially on this overhead side, you can see this I pushed less, this I pushed more. So when you push, you want to make sure you do the same pressure. Then, to continue the wedging process, you take your duck head that you just made. You put your fingers on the top, and just like how we rocked it when we started, we rock it towards our body so that the bill of the duck is facing straight down into the table, and this flat face that was on the table is creating a 90-degree angle with the flat part of the table. We still hold the clay the same way, where our palms are facing inward, fingers across the bottom and then on the top. Thumbs should be anchored and thumbs should be pointing away from you. And your pinky should be about 1 inch to 1.5 inches. Stagger your feet, and then you push forward diagonally until your pinkies touch. And then you repeat. Pull back towards your body, same hand shape, push. Pull back towards your body, same hand shape, cup, push. And you just keep repeating that. And as you get used to this technique, you lean back, and then you lean forward. Pull back, lean forward. And that way I'm using my body weight to help me knead the clay. Now, the first common mistake that I see is students push too hard. So if you're pushing too hard, what you'll see is this really flat side of that initial duck bill, and this part gets really skinny, and it would eventually break off because you're separating the clay from each other. The next common thing I see students do is they push too light. So if you push too light, you're not really creating that bill. You're just creating this little nub. So you have to make sure that when you're pushing enough where you're creating this duck bill that then transforms into a ram's head. So to know if you're doing the correct amount of pressure, your clay should more or less look like this. From the side view, you start seeing these spirals form, and that is the ram's horn. Then you see the jaw of the ram's head transforming into the mouth, and then you have the bridge of the ram's nose leading into the nose and then the mouth. And you should see layers of clay overlapping itself, and the cracks are normal, and this is where the air will get pushed out of the clay, because as you do the process, you're rotating the clay in a spiral, and all the clay from the center is getting rotated out and then pushed out through the mouth. Okay. So to recap, feet staggered. Take your clay, pull it back towards you. So I'll do it so you can see it sideways. Pull the clay back towards you. Cup your hands on the sides, fingers wrap around. Pinky should be about 1 inch off the table, and most likely your wrists are also diagonally facing downwards, not flat. And then when you push, you're only pushing diagonally down until your pinkies touch the table. Once it touches, release, pull back, and repeat. And to ensure that you're not using all arm muscles, remember, lean back your body, push forward your body. Lean back your body, push forward the body. If you stay stationary, especially if your feet are flat, you tend to do only arms, which is not wrong. You're just going to have a very fatiguing arm workout, and this will train your triceps. So if you didn't go to the gym today and you want to get nice strong triceps, this is something that you can do, but it will be much more tiresome. All right, so that is the basics of kneading, and we went over some common mistakes. The other common mistake I see students do, and we talked about this before when we talked about hand shape, is they often start with their hands in the correct position, but when they stop, their wrists go from straight to outwards, and their elbows go from tucked to outwards, and the hands go from facing inwards to facing the table. So when we do this, if you keep doing it over and over again, from a ram's head, this transforms into something that looks more like a croissant. Now, there's nothing wrong with this, but getting it back to a cube and then a ball will be much harder because it's much longer. And if you keep doing this, it'll get longer and longer and longer, and it most likely will crack in the middle because it becomes so thin. So the reason why this happens is as you open your hands up, you're pushing the clay outwards rather than forward, and that causes it to elongate. So to fix this, you just take your clay, tap it on the two ends of that croissant to get it back into the real compact shape. And it's actually starting to look more like a ram head now. And then you just try your best to keep your hands in the same start and end position. So you rock it towards your body, and you don't break your elbows, you don't break your wrists. They stay tucked in and facing each other. And that is the basic ram's head. Now, to finish this off, to get it back into a usable clay, after you do it, if it's brand new clay from the bag, you should do it about 40 times. If it's old clay and you're putting it back together, I call it recycled clay, if you're putting it back together, you should do about 80 times. After you do that amount, you are ready to transform this back into a log. So, when you're doing the ram's head, you're gonna have this mouth form. Now we wanna get this mouth back sucked into the body. So to do that, you still do the same pushing, but every push you do, you go lighter, pull it back, lighter, pull it back, lighter, and you keep doing that until the mouth is more or less gone, those layers are more or less blended, and then you roll it towards your body, so that you get this potato shape. And then from here, I tap the two ends on the table, and if I'm throwing, I take my hands and I start tapping the sides to make that rounded, then I rotate and I repeat. Tap the sides inward, and then I get a nice ball to throw with on the pottery wheel. If I'm using this to then hand build or make slabs, instead of tapping it to make it round, I tap it on the table to make it flat, whatever shape I'm trying to transform this into. So that is the basics of ram's head wedging or ram's head kneading. And it is a very important technique to get clay consistent and to remove any air bubbles. And it's not the easiest to learn. It will be awkward. Some students pick it up really easily. Some students take a little longer. But with repetition, with practice, this will become second nature, or you end up just doing it and your body takes over with that muscle memory. One last thing I forgot to mention. After you get your clay and it's prepped and it's ready to use, and you take it to where you need it to go, you're going to leave behind a wet spot, and if the clay is really wet, you're going to leave behind streaks. So in our class, and it's really good practice for other studios that you may be working at, normally there's a container of water and a sponge. If not, this is a good thing to do. You take that container of water and the sponge, and you're going to rub the area that you just worked on. And this will remove any of that dirty clay that left on the table, and it allows the next person to use the table not have a dirty spot where you worked. And you may not think that did anything, but if you look, you can see that the clay residue is making this water a little dirty. And I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but there's some old residue of dry clay here. So let's get rid of that by rubbing the table, allowing that clay to get removed and less buildup on the table for the next person. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you folks in the next video.